their September 6th meeting. Background information, the comprehensive plan is an official document adopted by a local unit of government as a policy guide to decisions about the physical development of the community. The plan is intended to be comprehensive, general, and long-range, and I would encourage you to remember those three words because that impacts any further action that we should take. This document is comprehensive, general, and long-range. Comprehensive plan is intended to provide an outline for the future community development. Plan provides a foundation for land use management and control. City's current plan was adopted on September 4th, 2007 and was intended to guide the development of the city for the next 10 years. And I think that's a plus-minus figure, depending upon changes that take place within the city's physical environment. It could be less, it could be more. The city's current plan has the following sections. There's an introduction, community context, land use, street system, parks and trails, utilities, historic preservation, economic development, planning statutes, and community data. And we will be focusing on the land use section of the plan. Land use forms the foundation of the comprehensive plan, and that's a statement that comes out of the comprehensive plan document. The type, location, and relationships of land uses shape the physical appearance of New Ulm, the social interaction of its residents, and the long-term economic sustainability of the community. The land use chapter of the comprehensive plan describes a desired pattern of development for the community. Every parcel of property, both public and private, is placed into a specific land use category. And this land use plan depicts use types, intensities, and locations of current and future development in New Ulm. The land use chapter seeks to reinforce desirable land use patterns, identify places where change is needed, and guide the form and location for future land use changes. At its September 6, 2016 meeting, the New Ulm City Council directed the Planning Commission to amend the comprehensive plan and determine a coherent policy allowing residential uses on the ground floor of buildings in the downtown area. Items to be considered included maintaining storefronts for commercial purposes and the percentage of a building's ground floor that can be used for residential or commercial purposes. The City Council did not establish a time frame for completion of this task. Once completed, the Planning Commission will need to conduct a public hearing on any changes to the comprehensive plan. Attached are the following materials. The entire land use chapter of the comprehensive plan is provided. I also provided a larger land use plan map showing the downtown area. And then I took the liberty of preparing possible changes to the text of the land use plan that would accommodate residential uses on the ground floor of structures in the downtown area. I did, however, leave blank the percentage of floor area that can be used for residential purposes. The City Council in their discussion of this matter talked about the need for having a rational change to the plan and to, again, the term rational was used, a rational approach to changing retail climates and how that should be accommodated. There also was mentioned the need to have something in place if other large buildings should be looked at for purposes of accommodating residential units. So the chapter, the land use chapter of the comp plan is 12 pages. So that's the first 12 pages in the attachment. Then the land use map that I provided focuses more on the downtown area. So it's blown up and it's in color. And so the downtown area is kind of the pink speckled coloring. And then there is a single page from the this land use section, page 3. And you will note that the current statement reads that housing may occur on second floor as part of mixed unit developments and in freestanding structures. And I'm proposing that that could be changed to read housing may be located on the ground floor buildings. This housing must, I don't know if must is the best word. I thought maybe can might be a better word upon further reflection. This housing can be placed in the middle and rear of the structure and not exceed blank of the ground floor building area. The remainder of the ground floor area must be used for permitted business purposes. Housing may also occur on second floors and in freestanding structures located on the periphery of the traditional downtown area. One thing that I didn't specifically do, I didn't say that the front of the building has to be reserved for commercial purposes. I guess that's a change that we could make if we wanted to be very specific about that. I guess that's up to you, what you want to do.
I think that change is needed. I wouldn't have a problem with anybody putting an apartment in the middle or in the back, but in the front.
Well, that's what it says. It says
Yeah.
here, must be, again, may be placed in the middle and rear. So that would leave out the front. And there aren't any buildings downtown that the front is not on. No, stupid question, but I'm just wondering, there's lots of buildings all over this place. I mean, there's nothing that's not on street. So is it the front, is it street, side of the building?
How are you going to define that?
I don't know, yeah. I mean, isn't there any buildings downtown that aren't street, street front?
Not that I can think
Okay.
of.
Are you suggesting that we should consider having a statement that the front of the building must be
Yeah,
business rather than just leaving it blank?
yeah. I mean, that would then very clearly, say that this is our position. Sometimes if you don't say it, then it's kind of, then someone has to interpret it, okay, this is what they mean by this. It's up to you, how detailed you want to get with it.
I would think the clearer the better.
Fewer the better meaning.
Clearer the better, so must be in the middle and rear
I'd be
of the
supportive of that,
structure.
of directing something to the front of the building and then picking a percentage of how much can be likewise.
Okay, so
At the
maybe
interior.
rather than saying the remainder of the ground floor area must be used for permitted business purposes, we could say the remainder of the ground floor area or the front of the building must be used, or we could just say the front of the building must be used for permitted business purposes.
Do we have to
any
say street
preference?
front, or can we just say front?
We could say street front, we can.
I'm just
whatever-
asking.
Whatever you want it to, however you want it to read.
That goes back to my question, is what's the front? Take, for example, the Minnesota Valley, or the funeral home. Street view is their side, but they consider the front coming into their parking lot. So what's the front of the building for that one?
For purposes of zoning, we consider the front of the building to be the street, where the street frontage is. And that's how a building is addressed as well.
Okay.
Is where the front of the building is. A better one might be United Prairie Bank, where you've got,
Yeah, what's the front?
you're on a corner.
Well, this particular building, they're proposing an entrance in the alley likewise, are they not?
Yeah, they are.
So is alley street?
Well, I think if, based on what I heard at the council meeting, is if the applicant, Mr. Bodie, had proposed to put apartment units at the rear of the building, that would have been acceptable to the city council. So I think, you know, in instances where we have a, you know, a defined front, which is probably anything except the corner lot. So we have to think about how do we want to deal with corner lots, where you've got two frontages, technically.
I'd recommend that we have the statement of the street or front facing the street, at least is required to be business.
So in the case of a corner lot, then we would be limiting those properties to probably a back corner rather than a you know, a larger area that you might have on a parcel that's an interior type of lot.
For instance, down by the old bakery across the street, or across the street from the bakery right now. You got the storefront in the corner, there's already an apartment, I believe, coming in. So already it's been utilized for an apartment. You know which one I'm talking about? Where the interior building
Oh,
is.
first,
First south in
Yeah, what's the
Minnesota.
building called? What's the
Route
business?
1 interior.
Yeah, Route 1 Interiors. There's actually an apartment leading in from the side street.
and the main floor or the second floor?
Second floor.
I think it's on the,
Access to the second.
It might be access, but
Gotta
you're
be
still,
access. You have to
yeah.
have an access someplace. There's no access, but there's no apartment on the first floor.
But you're already really determining that's the front of, you know, yeah, I don't know how
That's-
you're gonna put that in the language.
well, you could go by street address and say that's the front
go
of
by
the
street
Yeah,
building.
address.
well, that's what we're gonna have to do.
Because that would clearly define it. Because what's the address for like United Prairie? Are they on Broadway or are they on First
I
North
think they're on Second
or Second?
North, because that's where their
Main door is.
Main door
primary,
is.
yeah.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to use address.
If you have apartment in the middle of the building,
Then it doesn't make any
they
difference.
have a different address, do they not?
No, the concern is that what defines the front of the building that needs to stay commercial? They can be in the middle, they can be in the back, they just can't be in the front. So what's the definition of the front? And then we can either say that the, you know, front, certain percentage of it needs to stay commercial.
You could, you could do that one of two ways. You could say that the commercial could be this percent, or you could say that the housing could be this percent.
Would we want to consider the commercial part to be a minimum size?
That's up to you to, I
Mhm.
guess, decide. I did ask Counselor Mack, who's a member of the commission, what his thoughts were with regards to that, and he thought that 33% would be an appropriate amount, and I think that's the amount that Mr. Bodie
That's
had
pretty
for his
close.
Yeah,
project.
you sure don't want anybody to put up a false wall and just put a
Right.
display piece.
Right.
And have,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
so,
that could happen very easily.
yeah, that's why I said, do we need to have a minimum square footage of the commercial? You know, does that mean that the front, the commercial part needs to be a third and, well, that wouldn't work.
Well, I like the 33%.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Minimum?
Yeah.
What do other cities
Maximum.
do?
No, maximum for the apartments, for housing. Or,
Well, what I was thinking is maximum or
Minimum.
minimum up front.
has to be a third.
Yes. So you don't have a false wall put in there and just have a
Yeah.
mannequin put up there and say, or this is my bookstore, and never open up the bookstore and just say you got a bookstore there. And all of a sudden now you squeeze in 5 apartments in the back of that.
So did,
This way, they have to keep a retail space up front.
oh yeah, did Mr. Mackes say on the third, that, did he mean a third of the on the first floor was residential?
Yes.
Okay. Which I agree, I like that percentage. But then do we want to define what that front commercial minimum needs to be?
Well,
What if
retail.
it-
I know, but what percentage of the
Oh, not
first
re-
floor? So we don't get this false front.
I'm gonna throw a little devil's advocate
Sure.
at you. Because I think where our mindset is based on is one building. Because that's where the request is. And basically what we're gonna be recommending is something for longer term and future. And a building that could be larger or it could be smaller. If we say it's okay to put an apartment at the ground level, we don't say it's square footage or something, somebody could put 10 little rooms and have night rooms rather than an apartment in the future, 5 years from now in another building, a small building. So I'm gonna call them apartments, but I'm just gonna have a night room for construction workers to stay in or whatever.
I think that would still go under a different, you wouldn't be able to,
No, you wouldn't be able to do that.
because that would be against the,
If you call them apartments?
That would be a lodging type of facility. An apartment would need to have a bathroom, a kitchen, and, a sleeping area.
Oh, definition. So if we say apartments, that
Well,
isn't,
that's what we've used in the past to define apartment. Agreed?
okay.
The other thing to remember is that someone would still need to apply for a conditional use permit
Correct.
in order to proceed with the project. And so, there would be some ability there to, look at the request and make sure that it complies with the intent of the comprehensive plan.
So if we put in the comprehensive plan that it's allowed, and let's assume, one-third of it can be housing, do they still need the conditional use permit?
Yes.
That's where they deal with the parking, right?
Well,
Doesn't talk
that's
about
where you
parking.
deal with that list of criteria in order to
Doesn't
approve
impact
it.
the area,
Again, the comprehensive plan is more of a policy
Yeah.
statement.
it's not the
The
zoning.
specifics are really in the zoning ordinance.
Right.
And, if, unfortunately, we did the comprehensive plan, completed it, we weren't able to follow up immediately with a revised zoning ordinance, which would have then reflected
Yeah.
what the comp plan said.
Okay.
So,
And the zoning is where the parking spaces are required?
yes.
Okay. So we don't need to deal with this here?
No.
If I'm hearing what people are saying, that line would read, this housing must be placed in the middle and rear of the structure and not exceed 1/3 of the ground floor building area. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep, or should it be
Correct.
middle or rear? I suppose it could be inside.
Is that what we're saying? Is that what I'm
Correct.
hearing?
And I think don't we want to add an additional sentence then that the storefront is determined by street address?
Yes.
yes.
Yes. But those two wording changes does not cover any concerns about a small storefront. But if that can be fixed or covered under the conditional use permit? Or do we have to define that?
If you
Can
mean
you-
it's a small building and it's 1/3 of it, because it would have to be.
Can you explain?
We had talked about putting this false front for commercial in the front. Suddenly it's only 5 feet deep. Do we have to cover something in there, or do we?
Well, we've limited the amount of space on the ground floor that can be used for
As a
residential
third.
purposes to 33%. There's really nothing that would preclude someone from, that taking a storefront and building a false wall and, you know, but what we are doing is limiting that
Yeah.
residential area. So I guess that person then has a lot of storage area or,
Mm-hmm.
Are we limiting it too tight by only saying a third?
I don't think so.
I think so. Again, they can come back with you know,
You
The
got
conditional
1,000
use
square
part.
feet, now you're gonna give them 333 for the
What,
storefront.
like, what did he have over there, his
Oh, that
proposal?
was,
With the 3 apartments, well, how much?
it's like 38%.
yeah. It was 62 commercial and 38%
Close
residential.
enough.
It's pretty close.
One other thing I'd like to note that sometimes we use the term retail and sometimes commercial. We would use the term commercial because that tends to be more encompassing in that it covers offices, it covers retail, and it can cover other
Yeah.
non-retail uses.
You need bigger space than that.
So who wants to take a crack at making a motion and a proposal or?
Well, and do we, I mean, there's only 4 of us here, we're missing 3. Do we don't have a timeline on this,
No.
so do we table it, hoping that next month we get a few more opinions, or do we just run with it, because we're gonna have a public hearing?
My recommendation is that we should do something today, because the next step is we have to have a public hearing. You know, if, there's 4 of us here, we do have a quorum. We can start, you have to start someplace. And then, if I understand it right, the next step is we have to have a public hearing.
Right.
well, I'd make a motion that we change it to 33% of the building, the total building size, and use it for, the front address should be used for the main, the address should be used for the front of the building.
Front of the building.
I'll second that motion.
Clear as mud?
No, I think we can.
You can wordsmith it.
Okay.
And again, remember, you know, we're going to conduct a public hearing, and I assume that's part of your motion.
Correct.
We'll set up a public.
And at the public hearing, you can modify, you
Okay.
can add, you can subtract.
Mm-hmm.
By then, we might get some feedback.
That's correct. From not only the rest of our group,
Or maybe
but-
some developer or some building owner.
Right.
or-
And there might be something we're not thinking of.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Well, in the interim, there may be some things that you think of that
Mhm.
we should.
So we have
comment.
a motion and a second as presented, and to include setting up a public hearing, probably at our next meeting.
Yes.
And any other discussion on the matter? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, motion carried. So then at our next month's meeting, part of our meeting will be a public hearing on this.
So what gets printed in the paper? How do you do that for the public hearing?
Well, there'll be a public hearing notice, and what we will say is that probably something to the effect to make modifications to the comprehensive plan to allow the accommodation of residential uses on the ground floor buildings in the downtown area, or something similar to that.
Okay?
Mhm.
And we will move on to our, where's item 2 here? So, item 3 would be status of revisions to the zoning and subdivision regulations. Anything new?
Yeah, we've been able to devote some time to some of the topics that are typically included in a zoning ordinance. Spent time with telecommunications towers and parking. And we've been looking at our standards for the issuance of a conditional use permit. there's a variety of different standards that other communities use, and so we're just kind of curious
Mhm.
how ours compared to theirs. So we've been busy.
Seeing
We're
as we're
moving in
going
the
to be
right direction.
looking at the comprehensive plan, are there some more items that are in there that are going to be needed to be looked at the same time?
Well, that's a decision that would be up to the
The city
commission.
council or you, or us?
It's just that if we are going to take a more thorough look at the comprehensive plan, we are going to need outside assistance
Okay.
to do that. If we want to address this particular topic, we can do that in-house, and,
Okay.
you know, if we get much broader than that, then
Okay.
we're gonna need some help.
Okay.
That comprehensive plan has been in the works for, is it gonna be 2 years from now, 3 years from now completed, do you think?
Okay, the comprehensive plan is a document that's in place, and that's the one that was adopted in 2007. So, once we adopted the comprehensive plan, then the intent was that we would update our zoning
Zoning.
regulations to comply with the intent of the comprehensive plan. So, that's the process that has taken, much longer than was anticipated. So,
Okay.
hopefully, that's something that we'll have done in the near future. And then we're gonna redo the comprehensive plan. So,
Okay. Okay, item 4, the receive report on city council decisions concerning the planning commission matters for September.
okay, at the council September 6th meeting, they unanimously approved the application of Eric Bodie requesting a conditional use permit to allow 3 apartment units, topic that we just talked about. The one condition is that he did have to provide 5 parking spaces. One thing I want to point out to you, and it's something that I should have noted, should have pointed out to you, is that when we had the 2-2 vote, since the motion was to approve the request, since we had a tie vote, that means that the request was actually denied, because there wasn't a
Mhm.
prevailing
Didn't pass.
number,
Yep.
for what it's worth.
I'll make a comment on, I personally think I could have done a better job on that one after we had the 2-2 vote. What I was trying to do there, and so we're aware in the future, if we have the same situation, even though we have a tie vote, we still have the option to have another motion and add conditions. And we could have turned around and followed it right up with approving it or denying it with this condition or that condition or that condition, and then send it forward. That's always an option.
Mhm.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, at that same meeting, they received a request from the New Ulm Area Visioning Committee for a donation, requesting a donation of $3,000 to assist in funding the New Ulm Area Visioning process. As I understand it, this is it's a committee that's been established to establish a plan for the city that would include strategies and initiatives over a 3-year time period, and they're calling it Visioning 2020. It's supposed to take place, I think, November
Correct,
1st
November.
or 2nd.
Yep.
And I think it's at the New Ulm Events Center, if I'm not mistaken. But obviously, they are going to be talking about things that probably would be of interest to the Planning Commission. So I would encourage your attendance if you can do so. At the September 20th meeting, they appointed Councilors Mack and Schultz to meet with representatives of the New Ulm Economic Development Corporation to discuss future industrial park needs. Right now, we have a very limited amount of acreage available for industrial development, and in doing an inventory of other communities and what they have available, typically communities have a much larger area that's available for industrial development purposes. So the corporation is a nonprofit group that's, no, they aren't nonprofit anymore, are they?
Yeah, they are.
They are, okay. That has been charged with, addressing encouraging economic development, within the community for industrial purposes. And, they've brought to the city council's attention the need to, take some proactive steps to expand the size of the industrial park, and so they'll be meeting for that purpose. At that same meeting, council established a minimum property tax levy for the 2017 budget. As approved, the levy would increase property taxes by 21%. The reason it's so high is because they budgeted $1 million for an industrial park expansion. And so I expect there's going to be some significant changes to bring that
so.
percentage
I would hope so.
amount. That's it.
I have to pay for it one year.
Okay, item 5, report Heritage Preservation Commission. Anything?
Elwood asked me to report that they looked at awnings and signs at 125 North Minnesota, as well as windows for the old Hohenstein Brewery.
What is 125 North?
That's it.
That is, I believe, Corner Medical is the
Oh,
new
it's the
business
old
that
State
had
Bond and
the
Mortgage
old-
building.
Yeah, SBM
Yeah, SBM
building, correct.
So they're asking the Heritage Group to look at those? Is that what you're saying?
Elwood just reported to me that they reviewed awnings and signs for
Okay.
the Corner Medical, and then reviewed windows for the Hohenstein Brewery.
Yeah.
New
Any
windows.
signage that is located in a historic district or on a property that is designated as being historical, those types of requests go to the HPC for their review and approval.
Which is why that's why the Hohenstein building's there.
So the Hohenstein is within a district,
Historical.
Hohenstein building is within a district as well. I might note that buildings downtown are also, though, eligible for a grant of up to 50% of the cost of the signage and the awning, so.
Anything else?
That was it?
Anything else from the commissioners? Nada, nada. No further business, meeting adjourned then. Have a good day.